Hey everyone, welcome into One Resource Floating. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. Discord link should be in the information below. And thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it a ton. Let's get into it. Flesh and Blood has a plethora of tournaments in a very packed season that I'm sure all of you guys will agree is really demanding. So with that, with all these tournaments going on, there are Pro Quests, Pro Tours, Road to Nationals, Nationals, everything else, skirmishes. Let's talk about how to prepare for one if you've never been to a big event before. Maybe you're attending your first calling, maybe your first nationals, maybe anything. And hopefully I'll give you some things that will help you prepare. The first thing to know is don't feel like you need to go to tournaments just because you're not an expert or you're not good enough or you're not going to top 8 your armory every week. Daigo Yumahara, he's a Street Fighter player, and he was a really good Street Fighter player. Is a really good Street Fighter player. I shouldn't say was. He has the quote in his book: "Tournaments are a playground for people who practice for growth. It's where they show off their achievements. Once I made that realization, I finally started making continued growth my goal, rather than winning. Games enrich my life by allowing me to grow as an individual, and that's what motivates me to keep going." So going to a tournament, going to a bracket, anything, that should be motivation. It should be a place to learn. So make that your first goal going forward. One thing, as I'm going to get into this, I think there is a great article by the Rathe Times that talks about how to prepare and this mantra of respect and respecting everything about the venue and yourself and judges. And I'll link that down in the comments. Definitely worth a read. And I may cross over some points with that. I don't think I'm going to read the article though. So feel free to give the article a read. Definitely is worth your time. Also, if you don't have a subscription there, check it out. It's worth it. The first thing I'm going to say is to know your local regulations. Aside from what's in the Rathe Times article coming in, most places now at this point in time require masks. Most big venues, it's just something that most places are doing. I've also seen places that take vaccine cards, and you need to have that as proof to get into a tournament. Know that ahead of time and be respectful of people there, people enforcing the rules. We're there and we're able to be there because those mandates are in place. If those judges or some official comes by and says, "Hey, put a mask on," don't fight with them. There's so many people I saw fight with someone over a mask. And that, I would like to say that's exclusive to nationals, but no, that's not. That's been all year, and that's not just Flesh and Blood. So don't be that guy. If they ask you to put it on, go on. They're doing it to everyone. You're not a special case. Unless maybe you have a special case, that might be different, but work that out. So travel plans, backups going into this. Know your local regulations. So know your masks, know your vaccine cards, and know everything that's going to go into what you need for health regulations, for rules, for staying in the hotel, for the area. We're also going to talk about travel plans next, because every calling we did, like in the past year and everything, there's always some travel problem. Like someone in my group forgot their wallet at a place they were staying between that place and the final destination, so they drove a while back to get that wallet and then go forward. We have a nice car and a not as nice car, and I left the nice car for my wife so she could have it for the kids. And lo and behold, the not nice car, I had an issue with it. It happened right at 4:30, and places were closing up shop, so I had to wait for the next day. So I missed Team Blitz, which was sad. But if I, wouldn't have done Team Blitz, if I would just came the day of, then that would have meant, okay, well, not going to do that event. Whoops. And that'd be a really big bummer. Likewise with flights, we stayed out for a little bit in North Carolina, came back. Ian was holding up a lot of the flights. Make sure to understand what ramifications travel plans how they can get backed up, how they can change, and what you can do about that, what it will affect you on. And it's hard to, like, someone like a year ago, like, could I have taken off work to go a day and, afford to go to the calling, like, just to travel there to make it early? I don't know necessarily that I would do that. That would be a really hard sell. But that's something, if you can afford to do, realize that you're putting time and money into this. How assured do you want to keep everything? And that's just something, be prepared on everything. You'd be surprised what can go wrong. Forgot to say this point, so I'm going to cut away to add this in. TSA does not like your trading card games. The reason being, cards are, as it's explained to me, you're tightly packed in a deck box, stuffed together. It looks like combustible materials. It's just going to do better. Keep your cards out if you can, where they're going to be easily accessible, and you can show them or put them in a tray, set them out aside. I had someone going through all my luggage just because I had Flesh and Blood cards in a deck box in the bottom of the suitcase I was taking. So I created a little bit of a hiccup there on flying, but be prepared for that. They're probably going to ask about your TCG. It can go wrong. So going into this, I'm going to talk a little bit about personal experience. And these are going to be things that I don't feel were communicated to me. And it's not that they aren't, in the rules, or there's not somewhere that you can't find this out. But I came over, I didn't play TCGs. I didn't play board games until this big boom during the pandemic happened. And then lo and behold, granted, everybody picked up a board game or TCG. I played Star Wars Destiny with some friends casually. And then the pandemic happened, and then I started playing it competitively on TTS because no tournaments were around. And I played that for a little while, and I still do like Star Wars Destiny. I would still play that. But coming in, Flesh and Blood has in-person events. I've went to armories and everything else. I had someone a couple, like a month or two ago, say something about the cards, because I had some cards in my deck upside down, and they were like, why do you have cards upside down in your deck? And I was like, because I don't know, I shuffled them together and some cards ended upside down. I just thought that was, I didn't think anything of that. And the judge explained to me, because they were a judge, so they were explaining to me, okay, well, upside down card is a marked card. You can put a card upside down to know what that is, so when you're siphoning through a deck and you see the upside down card, you know we're going to draw. And that's something that, is a big no-no in the world. So going in, like, that's the first thing I think that I got acquainted to the rules. And I heard all these things about people. A lot of people lately have been complaining about foil cards and them curling. There's the infamous Eye of Ophidius story, where that started to coil, and that ended up being a marked card. That is something that is unfortunate, and I think that going to your judge is the best thing on that. Judges can look at your deck and make sure that everything's up to code, and that's something I'd recommend. Show up early to the event, go to a judge, say, hey, I'm going to look through my deck, make sure there's no problems. And that could also go into having money. Extra money for unforeseen circumstances. So that goes into where I talked about, having car trouble. This past weekend as well, I was trying to spend as little money as possible. Going to this, I had a really good draft run, and I went up and I was in like the second table, and they were like, okay, come by for deck checks. And I was like, okay, great. Give them my deck, go off. That's fine. So here is where I learned a couple things, and they were unforeseen finances I'd have to do, but I was prepared for that, and that's okay. So that is something that to keep in mind. So the first thing that came about was I have a large deck box. The game player, I don't have the lid for it because I just had it off, but the games layer is this like big thing. It has like trays for my dice, and it has like, I can keep deck boxes in it. Where this is a problem is because this is my deck box, essentially. They would like your deck box to be something free and clear so you can just hand someone and say, boom, here you go. I didn't have all my cards in the deck box. I had some cards just in here, especially because I was doing draft that day. I was just trying to store cards somewhere. So that was the first thing they came to me and said, hey, that's your deck box? Well, you need to have something that is set aside free and clear. I was able, thankfully, I had my backpack. I put all my stuff from that box into my backpack, and then I just had that with the deck I was currently using that day. I eventually went and bought this Dragon's Nest deck box, and now I can keep one singular deck in here. I also upgraded to mini snaps from the magnet snaps that I had before. So the mini snaps are something that can fit in these boxes, whereas the large magnet snaps, boom, these things, they did not fit in here. So that's kind of a bummer. I played a side event Sunday. I didn't do the Battle Hardened just because of time. And I actually won enough tickets to get one of these, the Gamegenic Watchtower. I think it's a little bit more convoluted, and maybe something like after a few months or years, maybe then I'll understand like the need for like this little wraparound piece. But that's not my point to review these. But I have two things to keep decks in now that are aside from the big deck box. And I made sure that everything can fit in there. So from now on, when I go to an event, I'm just going to take, boom, this is the only deck I need. I had the big deck box because I kept my CC deck in there. I kept my Blitz deck in there. I ended up keeping some other stuff for, like, if when I did draft, I kept my draft stuff in there. And I had two CC decks in there because I wanted to play Icelander and I wanted to play Lexi. I was more rehearsed with Lexi and I thought that would be better. And it would give me a better time. And I did that. But the Icelander deck was also in there. And then I also had some ice cards that were compatible with Lexi. So that is something that, I didn't plan on that. It wasn't something that I even thought of. But that's just something to keep in mind when you do future events. Going into this, there was another thing I had to do. And that was buy all new sleeves. So this, sadly, is not a good representation. And I have the old sleeve somewhere. Or I could probably show, okay. So here I could show a little bit, maybe what I was talking about. So you're going to notice that the majority of these sleeves are worn. And I didn't think anything of this, but there are some here on the top that aren't as worn, aren't worn as much. I put these in another deck, so I'm not worried about it. Looking at the cards that were worn and the sleeves that were worn and the sleeves that weren't worn. When it was in my Lexi deck, this was the main board, and I had these few were my sideboard. My sideboard was not as worn as my main board cards, thus creating marked cards. The judges did announce that disqualification was an option, and they deliberated on that. I ended up getting a match loss, and it wasn't something I knew about. Do I know about it now? Yes. And I don't think the judges are out here trying to protect the integrity of the game. And as much in that moment as I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm being harassed, or this is happening, or this is ridiculous, I get it. I understand. The judges aren't out here to make your day miserable. They're out here to keep the integrity of everything happening. And, even in this time, I was frustrated. Please give the judges respect. Respect for those to the judges. He told me that. Thank you for not disqualifying me. And that's something that I'll learn for next time. Everyone else I talked to was like, duh, you always buy new sleeves before an event. I didn't know that. No one ever told me. I had never bought new sleeves. I actually bought these sleeves when the Lexi sleeves came out, just this past summer, I think. So just going in through everything, be prepared to spend more money. I spent $50 more than I thought I would spend because I had to buy a deck box and some sleeves. Is anyone's fault? No, no one's fault. Just something that I was ill prepared for, didn't understand, and now I know. So I won't be ignorant on that fact for the next time. Going into that, the Rathe Times article talks about that mantra of respect, respecting everything. So respecting yourself is pretty key. So right off the tail end of this happening, this took probably 30 minutes for the judges to make a call on. So it wasn't they looked at my deck and they said that. It came by as they did a deck check because I was on table 2, and then I was sitting there waiting for the deck check. I was like, oh, this takes a long time. And then they came back and said everything. Well, after this time waiting for this, it's late in the day. The Nationals took so long. They took like an hour lunch break after like an hour and a half of games, which is like, oh my gosh, why? But you get to this point, I was fatigued from that. It was probably, it was probably 5 or 6 by this point, and only one CC match had happened. So going into the next match, I'm drained. I literally went straight from that game that I received the match loss, went and bought the box, sleeves, talked to the judge. No, I didn't buy the box yet. Bought the sleeves, re-sleeved everything, talked to the judge. They checked everything out, gave me the okay, went back to the game. Literally, it's starting as everything's happening. So I'm on the rush. I didn't get a break. As soon as I sat down, judge comes by and is like, hey, this is going to be a featured match. Come over and we'd like you to do this on stream. I was not respecting myself. I was tired. I needed some water. My water bottle was empty. This kind of goes into this point of like I was just in a downward spiral at this point. Like everything that's happened, I was overwhelmed. All these emotions are pulling through my head, and I think that at that point I should have said no. I don't want to be on stream. Went over to the stream. So I missed so many triggers, and this is something to do. Setting goals and expectations, and I kind of want to circle back to this a little bit. But sitting down, I got everything together. I got my deck in order, shuffled it, presented it, done. So we start, and the judge is saying, "Okay, you just have to wait to start until I give the okay." He was a very, very nice judge. He could tell I think he could tell I was nervous too about being on stream and everything. And I sat there waiting for the start, like, okay, I'm going first. Don't forget the tunic trigger. Don't forget the tunic trigger. Don't forget the tunic trigger. And a few minutes pass by, and I'm literally saying to myself this whole time. He says, okay, and begin. I'm like, pitch, Voltaire, arrow, arsenal, done. Forgot tunic trigger. It's like literally, I was saying it the whole time and just ignored it completely. And it took like 5 seconds to do my first turn, which was just setting up. So that was a bummer, not as intended. So I go into the next thing, and I'm managing. You have all these dice for, like to show how much your attack is. If something has go again, if you're giving it go again. I gave an arrow go again, and then I destroyed snaps to give it go again. No idea why I did it. Like I understood it. Well, I think I have an idea. The next attack did not have go again, but I was going to destroy snaps and then reload with the bullseye bracers. So that didn't actually work out because I destroyed snaps, and then my next arrow did not have go again. So I was like, oh my gosh, I just set myself back in like 7 damage. Like it was bad. Polar Blast, they didn't pay the resource. I forgot the Dominate trigger. I think I forgot 2 triggers on Insidious Chill. Everything that I could forget or do wrong, I completely just flubbed it. And it was my mental state just wasn't there. So that is something to go through and realize to take care of yourself. And going into this, we'll talk about expectations and goals. So going into this, my goal was I wanted to make day 2. I did achieve that goal, but I think that's a bad goal to have. If you're going to a tournament, you should have specific measurable goals, because anytime you can just get matched up against, X, Y, or Z, like I play Ranger, so fatigue Oldham is just like the worst experience in the world. That can happen. You can get matched up against fatigue Oldham every match, and then your goal doesn't really matter. It didn't really train you to do better. But you can say things like, I don't want to forget any triggers on my tunic. I don't want to forget any of the triggers that is going to happen when I do X or Y or Z. So those are really important things to do. Just lay down measurable things for you to accomplish while you're there. And I think that will go a long way. Things that are going to help you do this is actually going through and rehearsing and playing that deck beforehand. And it's really easy to go through and take look at some player who's doing really well. Oh, I got Pheno Black's Prism list, or I got, such and such's Starvo list, or whatever else. And that's, the best deck in the meta right now, and I just need to do that. There are certain things that just having the best deck doesn't prepare you for. That experience can teach a lot. So, like I'm playing Lexi into Oldham. So if he ice reacts, I can, as an instant, load Voltaire. That's something that is really key to do when I have to put a card back on top of the deck. Well, why not just pitch a blue, load the bow, 2 cards out of my hand, I have a floating resources. He just ice reacted for nothing. And that puts me ahead a little bit. So his ice reaction just got cards or resource out of his hand for nothing. Going through, that's something that, if I didn't maintain Lexi, if I didn't play that line, slog so many games with her, I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have that experience. I wouldn't have that knowledge. But that's just something that you can do. All of these things, being experienced and rehearsing is something that is the best thing you can do. There's an Azalea. I'm pretty sure that person didn't say, I'm going to take Azalea and I'm just going to play it out and see what happens. Who knows? Maybe they did, but I'm pretty sure I'm willing to wager that they did not do that. They had something that was rehearsed, and I'm going to guess that rehearsing put them a lot farther than just going through the motions on the deck. The main thing I would say to that is rehearse your deck. Most importantly, have fun. You're having fun. The person across from you is there to have fun. No one's there because they hate the game. Someone may call a judge, or a judge may come over. No one's there because they absolutely despise this experience. Realize that everyone is there to have fun. Yes, frustrations happen. That's just something to take into an account. It's something that happens with anything you're passionate about. People get upset. People get frustrated. Again, check out that Rathe Times article. Really good read. Make sure you respect all the things that it mentions. Respect the other people. Respect the judges. Respect yourself. Well, thank you guys for tuning in and watching today. Hopefully this has been helpful if you haven't attended an event, or maybe this is something that you reflect back on, like, man, I remember when I was a greenhorn and all this stuff happened to me. In the comments below, tell us about, your first event, maybe something that happened that took you by surprise, or something that you had to prepare for. But that's all for me. Thanks for watching One Resource Floating on the 86, and I hope you guys have a great one. Thank you.